I'm starting to feel like I might be addicted to podcasting, because this is how many podcasts in a row have I introduced it by saying I don't have anything to talk about? And I actually kind of do have something to talk about this time, which is things that I don't have to talk about. So I'll talk about that. Right? Cue the epic music. I can't say this enough. I know this new music that I've got going on for the thing. What am I doing here? I'm doing regular non-podcast stuff. I know that new intro music is kind of 70s kitsch. You trust me, I get it. I did it on purpose because I thought, I could have gone all, Wagner. And I did put the horns in there. I'll be honest about something. When I was remixing the intro music, I started out with that, the brass that you hear in the new intro music. Bum, 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 ba-da. I started out with a sort of Wagner-esque French horn doing that, and I just didn't like. Something about it was not capturing what I wanted. So I just changed it to a regular brass voice. Just a little bit of insight into how I wrote that, but I do like it. I really like it a lot. It does seem like the introduction to some 1970s TV drama, which that's fine. I'm cool playing that vibe. It's funky, it's groovy, man. But to get back to me talking about things I don't have to talk about, you may know if you watch this podcast, and if you don't watch this podcast, seek help. And when I say seek help, what I mean is there's a little subscribe button down there. You should just subscribe. And you know what the thing is? If you see 2 or 3 or 4 or 17 more of these podcasts, and you're like, this is ridiculous. Why am I getting notifications about this jackass? You can unsubscribe. It's that easy. That's the fun of the internet. But if you have seen several of these podcasts, or if you've seen a reasonable sampling of these podcasts, one thing I do a lot is unboxing. I buy so much stuff online and then unbox it for my viewers because I know that they're going to be bored. I'm trying to provide them some kind of, you can't take meds every time you need to go to sleep. So I'm here to help you, to provide you with boring content so that you can get sleep, because it's important to your health. You'll live longer. Now, having said that sort of public service announcement, I would like to say that the weird thing right now is that I don't have anything to unbox, and I don't have anything in transport. For like this, I don't know how long it's been since I've had literally nothing. Nothing being shipped to me, nor shipped to anyone else from me. No gifts. No holiday gifts or birthday gifts to family members. Nothing that I'm having to, to send to I don't have, anybody to send anything to now. But, sometimes I buy stuff to give to someone else. Nothing. The transportation web is free of me. For the first time in I don't know how long. I have nothing. And the weird thing is I knew that when I got my last thing, which I believe was the last pair of shoes I unboxed, that I would be in one of two places. I would either feel compelled to order something just to have something to track, or I would be in this place where I'm like, now I don't want to buy anything because I kind of like not being in a place where I have something on the way. I think the latter is true. So I don't. Which brings me to the second thing that I don't have anything to talk about, which is the fact that earlier in the podcast, again, if you watched, you would know this, I had talked about creating a reading pile for my Easter vacation. And in the past few podcasts, I've kind of revealed that I didn't go on that vacation. I booked hotel rooms I rented a car, and then at the almost at the last minute, I just decided I didn't feel like doing it this year. I just didn't feel like it, so I canceled it all, and therefore I've been doing other things other than reading that pile. So what's going to happen with that pile? I don't know. I do intend to read it. It's right there. I'm looking at it right now. It's a little pile of books, about the colonial history of the East Coast of North America, mostly about the Carolinas and Virginia. There's a little bit of everything in there, and I plan to read it, but I want to read it all the way through. I may I may just decide sometime, be like, hey, you know what? To hell with it. I'm taking next week off and I'm going to the beach, and then I'll grab that pile up and I'll throw it in a bag with some beach clothes and clothes. Well, I really overpronounced that. But that's probably what's going to happen. And when that happens, I'll let you know, because I did promise to tell you what I was thinking about those books, and I want to. But I just, as I was coming up on this, I usually go to the Outer Banks on Easter weekend. I just didn't feel like doing it this week or this year, and I don't know why. Just, and I like to follow my instincts, so I didn't, but I will. So that's why I don't have that to talk about. If you'd been watching those books and you'd be like, man, I really kind of want to know what he thinks about that, I'll get to it eventually. But right now I've got other stuff on my mind, and I kind of wanted to do a staycation, partly because, as I've been showing you, I tell you what it was the freaking Pedalpalooza. I went out and had brunch during Pedalpalooza, and I realized how cool the wharf was that had just been built up even though I'm trying to move away from this part of DC, I kind of realized I'm trying to fully exploit my proximity to the wharf while I'm still living in this part of the region. And so I decided to take a staycation, and during this staycation, started Wednesday. This is Friday now, Good Friday. We've got Easter and Passover, which I also want to talk about, coming up. And I just decided to go hang out at the wharf during the day, and then chill at home at night, do some just regular stuff. And part of the regular stuff I'm doing is podcasting. So I did that instead, so that I could sort of get the wharf out of my system and then move on to the stuff. I want to move out of DC into a not rural, but I do want to move into a more small town setting, preferably into a historical home. And so that's why I did not do a vacation, and why I'm not reading those books. But that doesn't mean I'm not still intending to read those books. They're still in a pile right there, and they are going to be read together, and I will report on that. Now, this is a very important weekend. This is one of those weird holidays that two traditions always cohere on, because that doesn't often happen. But we always have this whole Passover Easter thing, and if you're a Christian who has Jewish friends, or you're Jewish and you have Christian friends, this is always a fun time of year, because sometimes I know people who do this thing where they do Passover Easter dinner, and they just invite friends over and just sort of try to mix it up a little bit, and that's fun. But in that, this is red wine, which is there's a lot of symbolism in red wine. And one thing that I kind of want to get into holiday-wise, and something that I don't talk a lot about on this podcast, because I have an entirely other channel dedicated to my music. But I have one song that is Easter related. And it's not like a gospel song. It's not a preachy song. But it is a song that's about specifically about the story. And you don't have to believe the story to appreciate the song. The song is really about looking at the story as a narrative, and as a narrative that relates to people's lives. Because I took the story of the Last Supper and the events that followed the Last Supper, and I broke it out and said, well, here's a bunch of characters. Which character are you being in your life? And because that's what stories, whether they're religious stories or not, as you know, if you watched a lot of stuff, I talk about even fiction. A lot of the whole point of stories is to see yourself in the story somewhere, and I'm being that character, and this is what's going to happen if I don't do this or that. Well, when you look at that story, there's a real question: who are you being? And I wrote this song, Gethsemane, to be a sort of unwrapping of that, what's a religious story, and it's very important in a religious sense to a lot of people. That and I don't want to step on that at all, but it also can have a general meaning for anybody. You don't have to be a Christian to appreciate that story. That's a very interesting story. I'll be honest with you. I did not like the film, what was the name of the Passion, the Mel Gibson film. I didn't like that film. Even that you might think that I'm predisposed to like a film. I did not like that film, but a friend of mine who saw that film because they were just curious, and this friend of mine, she was a Wiccan, and she knew very little about Christianity, and she came out of that film and was telling me, I've never been moved. She wasn't moved to convert. I'm not trying to make this into some kind of schmaltzy conversion story. No, she stayed a Wiccan. But she said she understood Christians better after having watched that story, because she said she was moved and she was weeping during that story. Not because she believed it in a religious sense, but because she was moved by the story itself and just the idea of what a person could go through for something that they believed in. And so you don't have to be a Christian to be moved by that story. You don't even have to believe that those events ever happened. Because people are moved by stories that they don't believe. I mean, you watch films all the time. You're probably going to go watch a film this weekend, and it's fiction. You know not only that the story's fiction, but you know that there are actors on the screen playing out a fictional story fictionally. But you're still going to be moved by it. So I wanted to take that story and say, okay, I'm not going to use that story to preach, but I am going to use that story to say there are a bunch of characters in this story. And which one are you being? Are you being the Judas character? Are you being the Peter character? What are you doing in this drama? And are you doing the right thing? And so I wrote the song to sort of, take, most Easter songs are so gospel-y. And I wanted to have a song that was less that way, and to allow that story to be accessible to people without, kind of nudging them to convert or to believe anything that they didn't want to believe. Just, if you have to take the story as a story, just take it that way. It's a very moving drama, and so I wrote that song, and it's one of the it's weird to say that you have favorite songs of your own, but that's a song that I remixed several times because I was never happy with the mix. I'm still not happy with the mix, but what can you do? So I want to direct you to that. It's just Gethsemane. I'll spell it here so that you can look for it. Just Nelson Leith. I use Nelson Leith. I take the J, the John, off when I'm doing music. And Gethsemane, and just check it out. Or check out any of my songs. I write a lot of songs from a kind of a semantic and distance, so that I'm talking about things rather than speaking through myself. I like to do that, to give the viewer some space to appreciate the song aesthetically without feeling like I'm trying to ensnare them in anything. Because I respect my listeners when it comes to music. I kind of want them to be able to emotionally appreciate things without feeling like I'm trying to move them someplace, because that's their choice whether they want to be moved. Anyway, this has been my Talking About Nothing, Talking About Something podcast. It's a little bizarre, but since this is a very important weekend, and I don't want to pass over the Passover, because that's an important part of this too. There would not have been that Easter story if there hadn't been a Passover, because that's when it happened. And the Passover is also a fantastic story. I mean, goodness gracious, I've taken part in Seders before, and if I tell you what, if you're not Jewish and you've never taken part in a Seder, I will say this: do it, because you will be surprised and moved. It was very much more. I mean, the one that I took part in was Reformed, so it wasn't as as in depth as you might find if you find some Orthodox friends. Really do that. But it is something that I don't think that people outside that community fully understand how involved that process is, and it's really interesting. I think that especially that people who come from liturgical traditions, or you know what, I'm not even going to say that, because even if you're an atheist who grew up atheist, I think that if you go in there and you just sort of see the process that people put themselves through to build a sense of community over dinner, it's really moving and surprisingly involved, and you realize that people have been doing something like this for thousands of years. You're living ancient history. It's incredible. So I don't want to make this all about Easter. It's Passover is also this weekend, and it's an amazing holiday in its own right, which is a ridiculous thing to say because it predates Easter by so long. I say stupid things sometimes, as you know, and as you would know if you subscribed. Also share and like and tune in. So corny that I'm going into this sales pitch. For more thoughts of length!